There it is, episode 1. My name is Seth Tower Hurd, former, I guess, Chicago TV and radio personality and journalist turned like corporate person turned not corporate person in Missouri. And Ali is in California, and we were quite literally discussing the indoor weather, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because this California girl doesn't want to go outside when it's cold.
Yeah, so turtleneck, 64 degrees.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Well, you being like the health and fitness person, which we'll transition to in a second, technically you can adjust to it. Did you ever see the thing about the family in the USSR that had fled to basically fled like being persecuted into Siberia, and they lived there so long, and the kids grew up in Siberia, and they could run deer to exhaustion to hunt them barefoot in the snow.
Really? Wow.
So I try to remind myself of that every time I'm cold. I'm like, I could adjust to this. I just, choose
Just
to be a weak
too
person who
much
has a
of
down
a
parka.
too much of a to do it.
It's not medical advice, by the way. Nobody go do that
Right.
and then lose a foot and,
I don't think that's a
email
really
me.
good idea. Yeah, that's survival. Yeah.
Um,
Now, as they're running, do they still own their pinky toes, or did those drop off somewhere
I
along the
don't
way?
know. There's a documentary on YouTube for anybody that's curious. It was like in the 70s, they did an oil expedition into this completely uninhabited part of Russia, and they found a family there. And these people
Really?
were incredibly robust to have survived. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think they
I
knew
mean,
about anything.
I was sure you were going to tell me about their skeletons or something that they found. They
No.
actually found them still alive. Wow.
No, they survived. I think
Okay.
the parents had died off. The siblings were there, had never had contact with other people. And I
Oh.
believe, they had fled like in the era of the Model T Ford. So they didn't know about World War II. They didn't know about the moon landing. Like they had been completely alone for like their entire lives.
Oh, wow. They would
Yeah.
not want to just stay there. It's
I,
you're better off to
I
stay.
would not trade that off for, I wouldn't
I
trade that life for
wouldn't.
being able to run barefoot through the snow.
Nope, nope, me neither. No.
And
Neither
by
of
the way,
those sound like very much fun.
in addition to the other stuff you do, you are actually a licensed therapist. So your advice to just stay in Russia, stay in the Siberian wilderness is backed with some science.
Yeah. Is that what we're gonna call that advice? Okay. Yeah, sure. Let's do that. But by the way, just one minor correction. I have a master's in counseling psychology. I have worked with kids and women of domestic violence. I did not go finish the hours to get my licensure. I decided to move on and go
Go.
build a financial planning practice
Yeah, well, let's
instead
go
of
there a
doing
second.
that.
Because we're the name of the show is the Optimized Executive. We're going to talk about what that means, but let's go there for a second. So you got
Okay.
close on that, and then you changed. I don't change careers exactly. Change direction. Use a skill
Mhm.
set a different way.
Yeah.
What was that? What happened there?
Why did I change? So one of my personal training clients, who is a pretty wealthy guy, mind you, I was personal training in the gym while I was getting my master's and working full time, doing full time at both. And he said, "You really don't want to listen to people's problems for 40 hours a week." And I said, "But I really want to help people. I really want to make a difference. I know I can." And he's like, "Oh, why don't you go into finance and not trade your time for money?" And all I could think of were the Goldman Sachs headlines that all you ever heard about financial firms was how they were screwing somebody over. Right. And I thought,
Yeah.
did you not hear me when I said I wanted to help people? Hello. And he was like, just go look at it. Just go check it out. Just go check it out. Trust me. And while he was right, I wouldn't want to listen to people complain, right? So maybe therapy wasn't the place where I would have found my fulfillment. I definitely found fulfillment helping people get where they wanted to go financially because it did help relieve pressure off their families, but it wasn't enough. And so
Yeah.
here I am with the full scope of everything I do, the money, the mind, the fitness mastery, all of that stuff, because you really can't separate one from the other. But that's my circuitous route to come back to where I was put here to be anyway, which is coaching.
Yeah. And by the way, that your initial reaction to like, I want to help people, all you hear about Goldman Sachs or the financial sector is, that they're screwing people over or whatever. I mean, if you think
Mhm.
that's bad, you got to see people who don't have a plan. Doesn't end great.
Oh, I know. I know how it ends for people that don't have a plan. That you know what? What's funny about that you mentioned that because this kind of dovetails into something else. But I started wondering, like, okay, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's not that. Maybe health isn't that big of a deal, right? Maybe being fit is just running up the score. But we just like maybe it's not as bad as I think it is.
Yeah.
So I started digging in and doing some research. I had a doctor over at Kaiser who was a financial client of mine. She was like, "No, I want to help you with this project." So I wanted to figure out like what does it really cost people to have the typical chronic diseases? Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not that big of a deal and maybe it's not preventing people from retiring and maybe they don't really have to work that hard. Like maybe everybody has it right and I had it wrong. And what I discovered was some of the minor ones. I just picked out the ones that people typically get diagnosed with: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease, ADHD, that's a big one, and osteoporosis. And then eventually I threw in Alzheimer's. And almost all of those, other than the ADHD, the heart disease, osteoporosis, high blood pressure, diabetes, I included diabetes, and all of those are chronic diseases that are correlated with obesity. And what I discovered is it's a gigantic bill. Like it's the equivalent of retirement kind of price tag that people are paying for not getting their health in order, not fighting their chronic disease. Yeah, and I thought, okay, I've got to tell everybody. But so I started doing some seminars in 2013 and invited some doctor friends I knew, and they saw it and went, well, we want to help and we want to join in. And so we did a few more with them and everything. But it's really, really a lot of work to produce an event like that on your own without somebody helping. And so I didn't continue it, but it's a message that people really, really need to hear. Because if you're looking at like, gosh, I hate my job, or gosh, at least I like it, but I want to retire, I can't wait to retire, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck if you're also battling diabetes and heart disease and everything else, because unless you've got a pension, like my dad did as a teacher, your money is going to your chronic condition. You're not going to have it in your investment account. And even if you do have it in your investment account, by some miracle, you manage your money really, really well. And in spite of inflation and everything else, get ready to spend most of it on your health care in retirement and not doing the fun things that you think you're going to go retire to do.
Well, and I think we kind of have to talk about how we met then, because, as far as the hidden healthcare costs, I got a full basketball scholarship to junior college for all of $4,000. And 20 years later, I'm reaching out to you. What's that?
They offer scholarships to junior college?
Yeah.
That's wild. Or at least they did 40 years ago. Sure, 20 years ago.
That would make me like 60 something. Be a very different conversation about retirement right now.
20 years ago, you're right. You look great for your age, by the way. Should I call you sir?
Let's wrap this up. Wheel of Fortune's on.
Right.
No, so I got a scholarship to I guess what you would call like a last chance U before that was a term. And I eventually figured out that I'd been signed to be a good influence, as far as I could tell, because the guy transferred in. We kind of specialized in very talented players who had gotten in behavioral issues at other schools. So like
so you just hid yours better than he did.
No, my best friend that year had done, like, he was going to go to Wisconsin and play, and then he did jail time over the summer, and there we are. Point guard, very talented point guard, transferred in at the semester, and I was like, so what's up, man? Why'd you transfer? And he's like, oh, well, this dude talked to my girl, so I hit him in the head with a brick.
Really?
And I never fouled that guy in practice. I'm not making that up.
I bet you did
not. I'm like, oh, look, you got another layup. I didn't guard you. I don't know.
He's just this side of crazy.
So unfortunately, what happened for my $4,000 there was that due to improper training, because we had like a guy that played for the Milwaukee Bucks for a couple seasons as a point guard, and they were like, oh, well, you were a pro athlete, you can be in charge of athletic training, despite the fact that he had no background in it. And so that's how I got hurt both times. Probably
that makes sense.
Yeah, he told me to bench press improperly. That tore my rotator cuff, and then I wound up blowing out my knee. Kind of tangled up with another player, and I hyperextended my right knee and blew it out.
Hmm.
But I don't know if that would have happened if I would have been kind of properly trained, properly, stretched, properly strengthened. And
No.
so my $4,000 scholarship, by the time I got through all that, and then the recurring issues that happened in my life, were probably a $30,000 investment.
I was just gonna say it was easily 3 times that, but almost
Yeah, and
4,
so
almost
you're like
10.
the only person
Jeez.
in the world I could find that fixed my shoulder, because
You're
I kept trying
welcome.
to lift different ways, and I'm like, "Oh, this didn't work. This didn't work. This didn't work. What the heck?" Tried a
It
couple
makes
different
me
trainers.
it makes
What's
me
that?
really happy to hear you say that because sometimes I have this ability to go really, really wide on subjects where I
Yeah,
can learn a lot of little things about stuff, but not go super, super deep in anything that I'm not incredibly interested in. So
yeah,
I looked at training like, that's easy for me. Okay, I want to know all the different things, all the things that affect an injury, not just the muscles, not just the injury itself. Like that's why I recommended chiropractic, and I have all these other like, oh, let me research and understand scientifically these other modalities that can play into something like your condition.
yeah.
So that's what I do
Uh,
differently.
in
I love
I had
trainers.
previously tried to work with trainers, trying to figure out what to do with my shoulder, what kind of workouts can I do, and like one of them had me do 120 push-ups in the first workout, and I like couldn't move my left arm after that. He's like, "Well, your shoulder's just not strong enough, so we're gonna hit it really hard." And I mean, it's probably a month recovering from that. And
I bet.
so, uh,
So how much did he tear it extra?
uh, good, good question. Um, Very
Oh,
good
I'm
question.
really
And
sorry.
so
This is what
that's
frustrates me about new trainers.
is
Like
this,
they're like a kid with like a shiny new toy. Ooh, I know all this stuff now. Ooh, now let me try it out on you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They have
I mean,
no
it's kind
idea
of the
what they're
same thing.
doing.
Like when I see people that that are doing some sort of content stuff, and they're like, nothing against them, but they're like 22 and they just got out of college, and they're like, I can run your brand, and I'm like, you can.
Have you
Um,
even watched enough brands to even know what that looks like, kiddo? Sorry. I love them. And I mean,
yeah,
they just need to understand what they don't understand and put themselves in like you can't run my brand, but you could
yeah,
work with somebody and get better faster, right? Like
yeah.
mentorship is missing in today's age. Everybody thinks, oh, side hustle and I'll just figure it out as I go. But you
Yeah.
could be mentored and
Well,
get
and
a
I
lot
don't want
further.
to correlate age with talent, because there are a lot of people that have done the exact same thing for like 30 years and know nothing basically,
This is
except for
true.
just doing the same repetitive job. But if you were at prom within the last 3 years, like you probably shouldn't even be running a local business social media, like, strategy by yourself. Sorry.
Right?
And people think that they can cut corners there and like that's going to work out. And it's sort of like being like, well, I'm going to save money on food by just eating McDonald's. It's like you did save money on something there, but I bet you're going to pay it somewhere else.
Somebody at some point convinced them that because they grew up with a phone in their hand, they are somehow more qualified than those of us that have been working at this and evolving with all of this technology for the last 2 decades. Like
Yeah.
just because you had it before your brain was ready for it doesn't mean that that gives you some special gift.
Yeah. A lot of
We
time
all learned
spent
it.
on Instagram does not give you any sort of authority to like run Instagram well in a way that's going to produce sales.
$5 says they don't even understand the algorithm that well, or what
Yeah.
makes it run, or what makes
Yeah.
it not.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Um, so that's our cantankerous rant
Yep.
against the kids.
Yep, yep. And since I turn in about 2 months, since I turned 48 in 2 months, I'm gonna just own it. Just like it's my prerogative at this point. I get to.
uh,
I've waited all my life to get to get to shit on whippersnappers. Sorry.
well, I don't think that's going to be one of our clips we pull out
Did they
here.
put something in my water today?
That
It's a good
that would
leg
be a lot
day.
of
That's
vodka
what
for 10 a.m.
right, right.
Pacific Standard Time.
Allie's snarkiness is brought to you by an excellent leg day.
So let's get in a bit here on holiday burnout, brain fog. Why is it so dang hard to get anything done between Halloween and New Year's? It's like this thing where everybody's like, oh my gosh, you got to close all your sales in the fourth quarter. So much riding on it, and it feels like people either work less or they work a bunch, but like the needle doesn't move. And
Yeah, it almost feels like you're pushing a boulder uphill.
Yeah.
Right. So for a lot of people that are trying to get sales done in industries where they've spent their budget for the year, it's going to feel like that. You're just
Yeah.
grinding it out and nothing's happening. You might as well take the last 2 months off, right? But for a lot of industries, this is the time to make those sales. I mean, so this is historically when I would meet with the business owners that in my that were my clients, and okay, how much profit do we have this year? How much can we set aside? How
Yeah.
much can we take off the tax plate, so to
Yeah.
speak, and put it into your own pocket? So I'd be doing that right up in between Christmas and New Year, right up until the end of the year. I'd be getting them to fund their different projects and, you know,
Yeah.
vehicles.
I do think that there's still a lot of work, that can be plowed here. I think one of the when we talk about brain fog, I mean, this is more on your side of things. So,
Mhm.
how much is basically sugar, alcohol, lack of sleep?
Most of it,
Yeah,
almost all of
it's
it.
it's most of it.
Yeah. If you eliminate those things and you're still having brain fog, then we have a leaky gut issue that we need
Yeah,
to address. Most people have leaky gut anyway, but they're kind of used to operating with it. Most people don't know how brilliant they probably are if they fixed their body up and optimized it and stopped doing the things that, inflame the white matter of their brain and make it harder to perform. So gluten inflames your brain, alcohol can inflame your brain. That's usually pretty temporary. It'll go away in a couple of days. Gluten goes away in a couple of days too. But sugar too, because
yeah,
sugar binds to the same receptors as opioids in your brain. So that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to kick sugar. And as soon as Halloween comes in, I mean, everybody's been holding on all year long for their kids' Halloween candy that they're going to go sneak.
yeah. Well, and if you're in an office environment too, people love
Yeah.
just going to Walgreens, buying the like whatever is left over for a couple bucks and just dumping it at the office break room. And
Yep,
they're
bless
like,
that
"Here's
office
8 pounds of
manager.
candy corn. Go nuts, people. This
If
is
I
how I'm
could talk
making you
to
my friend."
if I could talk to every office manager and be like, "Don't do it. Don't do that." Ugh.
And so
But
if you cut that, so basically we're connecting these things. You cut that stuff out, and which is not the easiest thing in the world. But if you don't just constantly shovel crap in your face, if you've got 4 weeks and some change here left to
mhm.
close some stuff out, and if you're not just surfing around and just eating donuts at 2 in the afternoon and cakes and whatever people are bringing in, you're gonna have a better shot here.
You know what? I decided this year that, and I've never done this before,
Yeah,
but feel super good about it, is tightening it up and going super strict up until Christmas.
yeah,
There was like 34 days left in the year, right? Maybe 33 now, whatever. And up until Christmas, being super, super strict on diet and super tight on everything, like no alcohol, no sugar, great sleep, kick ass workouts, just for a tight 30 days to make it through without getting tempted. Just like the mindset is, no, I'll have it at Christmas. This
yeah,
is a holiday. It's not a whole a month, right? Not a whole a week, a holiday. And when I get to Christmas, then I will enjoy myself and I'm going to probably go back to my really good eating habits between Christmas and New Year and then enjoy New Year and then then 2024 starts off. Now, I've never had a problem, mind you, meeting my goals, but
yeah,
this one just felt like, what if we took it up a notch? What if I did what I was telling people to do on Twitter and I really lean into the tape and I really give it my all, not just in business, but in every aspect, and get really, really tough and strict on myself for just 30 days. Just 30 days during the holidays.
yeah. Well, and
Been
that's one
good
of
so
those things
far.
especially when you're talking about larger organizations, how things get just so
Mm.
dang dysfunctional. Like between November and December, it's like nobody can book any meetings or anything like that. I think that there's especially when you have a lot of people at various levels of management and just sort of worker jobs that are all just lethargic.
Mhm.
It it really, really slows down. If you're on the sales side of things, it's harder to get the meetings. I would say if you
Yeah.
want to be freaking pretty decently impressive, the fact that like you can show up with a clear head when nobody
Mhm.
else is, if you're trying to get promoted, is not the worst thing.
Oh,
Um,
exactly. Oh, presenteeism is huge.
yeah,
Usually we associate it with something that's happened in in the employee's life that's distracting them, like grief or trauma or something happening at home or an illness. I mean, all kinds of things happen, death of a loved one. But but yeah, nobody even thinks about like how can I outperform my peers and get to that next promotion and demonstrate that I'm somebody that they should take seriously. Nobody thinks like that because they all go, well, I'm just going to do what everybody else is doing. But if you're a high performer and you want to get ahead, right now,
Yeah.
right now is exactly when everybody else is taking their foot off the gas, and all you got to do is just stay steady on the trajectory that you were on. You don't even have to kick it up like I am. You just stay steady, and everybody else is already breaking and falling back. You're going to show up like, well, who do you want me to lead? Where's my
Yeah.
promotion? Right?
Yeah. That is, it's not that much harder. Like all you
No.
kind of have to do is act like you probably should be acting for the rest of the year. And it's
That's it.
one of those things where it's very, I think it's very natural to look at your peers and just sort of match their behavior. Right.
Well, associations are powerful. You are the culmination of the people you spend the most time around. Here's the thing about that. It's not to be something that makes you go, well, shoot, nobody I'm around is going anywhere. That's okay. Don't spend as much time around those people, but spend your time alone. Spend your time listening to podcasts or conversations of people that are further ahead of you and start to adopt their mindset and make them turn them into your friends in your mind temporarily while you're leveling up to go find new ones in real life that you can hang with that are at the new level that you want to be at.
Yeah. I will say, as much as I loved the fact that I grew up in rural America and on a farm and everything else, it took me a while in adulthood to shake this idea that like, oh, well, if you get ahead, the tractor will break or something. And I found myself
Oh,
really buying that in adulthood. I mean, because there's a lot, to be fair, I got that a lot growing up because, my family was able to grow the farm and be, decently successful with it. But, in the 70s, there was a corn blight that wiped out the corn crop in the Midwest. In the 80s, the dairy industry went belly up. In the 90s, we had sheep, and the Australian sheep market just came in and just obliterated the American sheep market because they could farm huge tracts of land with helicopters because,
mm-hmm.
they basically have an empty country to farm.
Right.
And so, I sort of have lived my entire life like thinking that the next, 2008 is probably Thursday. And it's usually not. And
Right.
what's funny is like I really had to rewrite that script in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And to connect it back to just like eating sugar crap, leaning back, not closing sales, it's very easy to tell yourself, oh well, it's not gonna be great this year or next year or whatever, and then just not do the stuff. When in reality, even if you take the 2008 thing and be like, oh my gosh, doomsday or whatever, I mean, Spotify, Uber, what so many companies came out of that last recession because big old stuff died, and that
Mm-hmm.
left like capital and room for ideas to actually happen.
Right. I'm expecting that to happen again, and I'm excited about it, to be honest. What you're talking about is being consistent with your identity. So growing up, the identity was farming, and here's all the risks
Yeah,
that are associated with farming. And every lifestyle has a risk to the lifestyle, right?
yeah,
Everything has its kryptonite. But if you know what that is and you've planned for it, then you don't need to sit here and worry about the other shoe dropping, right? But when you're in farming, you're talking about a lot of natural disasters that happen in that particular type of industry that don't happen when you're sitting at a desk
yeah.
or doing a lot of other things, right? But there are different types of disasters. So you just plan for your likelihood, for your bigger risk, and then move forward with throwing off abandon. Just go after it and go seize what you want and change your identity because you're no longer a farmer and you haven't been for a long time.
I moved some cows a couple weeks ago, but that barely counts.
I have a client that told me this morning, he's like, I'm like, how are your intervals this morning? And because he's 2 hours ahead of me. He's like, I've been moving cattle this morning. Okay, well, let me know how those intervals were when you get to them. He's like, yes, ma'am. I'm like, you'll get there. Yeah,
No,
let's
that's good because
get back on this.
a lot of farmers think they don't need to work out because they work outside. But they also just like swill coffee and Mountain Dew all day. And
I'm
Yeah.
like, aren't the combines doing a lot of the work, a lot of that hard labor that their grandfathers used to do?
And the combines are essentially driving themselves in a lot of cases now. So
Mhm.
the only cardio you get there is like once in a great while the
Climbing
combine
up
does catch
and
fire,
climbing.
and so you get very very intense
You
cardio
run,
getting out of it. No, a
run
friend of
fast.
mine's combine burned this year. Everybody's okay, but you get dust and lots
Wow.
of fuel and heavy machinery, and things can go boom, and you take a very big jump very fast.
I bet you do. I
Yeah.
hope your knees are okay and you don't break something on the jump.
But on the,
Good reason to stay
on the
fit.
mindset thing there, you know, one of the things I realized when you talked about your next promotion and stuff,
Uh-huh.
one of my mentors had to just finally be like, you complain about every job you have after 6 months a year. And I'm like, yeah, that's called everybody. There's a support group. They meet at the bar. And he's like, no, no, actually, most people like the security of a job. They like the kind of
Most people are not
consistency.
complaining 6 months in.
Yeah. He's like, they like the consistency and stuff. And one of the things I had to realize is I'm, I mean, and a lot of times I do like aspects of working for somebody else, just not as much as I like being on my own. And
Mhm.
I just had to come to the reality that like I'm really good at networking and I'm good at sales, but I am bad at the things that you do to get promoted. And
Mhm.
when you kind of think about like what is your track if you're looking to make more money, executive or entrepreneur, like which direction are you going to go? People be like, I want to go play. You want to play golf? And I'm like, you want me to go somewhere with a dress code? I'm like, do you want to go like deer hunting this weekend or freaking go hiking or go to the gun range? No.
I I can
All right.
relate.
Well, it's got awkward.
I can totally relate because I don't smoke cigars and my golf game sucks. So, doesn't leave a lot of room for me to get promoted in many circles, especially the financial industry that's largely male dominated, and they're smoking cigars and playing golf. And I was like, shoot. Okay, well, I guess I'm hanging with your wives.
It's not a really good place to close deals.
Nah.
And so one of the things you just got to realize, called this the optimized executive, but realizing like, the same stuff's going to apply if you're starting and running a business. The reality is that it is hard to admit that the stuff that's holding you back is largely the stuff that's in your control. And you
Hmm.
don't want to have to say that because it means you got to do harder stuff. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm at my limit. You're not.
Yep. No,
We
you're
can figure it
totally
out.
right.
And let's kind of dive into 2024 here, because one of the things I'm realizing is it's probably easier to close this stuff out this year than next year. You talked about basically a double cataclysmic financial event that's going to happen.
We were
Just to be
chatting
very
about
cheery
that,
around the
weren't
holidays.
we? We were we were chatting about that. So, what I was sharing with you was George Friedman wrote a book called The Next 100 Years. I've read it about a decade or so ago, maybe 15 years ago. And what he talks about are these spending cycles. Well, he also talks about geographically, like who the world powers are going to be and all of that. But there's another gentleman, Harry Dent, who also talks about spending cycles and recessions and how every 40 years, so when you're between 40 and let's say 55, you're spending the most money because your kids are going to proms or getting cars. If you have teenagers, you know what I'm talking about. Surprised I have anything to I have two pennies to rub together at this point because my daughter's 16 and all she wants to talk about is getting a car. Anyway, that point being said, but when we're raising our children, we're spending the most money. And we start making more money in our 50s to 60s. Those are our peak earning years because of all of this history and background and wisdom that we bring to the table for organizations to thrive. So so the people that are their kids are kind of out of the house, kind of out of that teenage years or off into college, they're spending less. So now they're going to try to make up for all the ground that they missed not saving while they were raising their children. And they're going to try to make up for that in the stock market before they go to retire. But right now we have two generations converging on their lack of spending at the same time.
Okay.
So if it happens every 40 years and we have two generations and we have these baby boomers that are really old, they are not spending a bunch of money. They are they're holding on to everything right now.
They can still
'Cause they
run the
don't
whole
know how long.
government, though. They just can't spend any
Don't
money.
get me started on we need age limits, mister. Age limits. Age limits and term limits. Anyway, well, yes, and we need under limits. We need, like, you can't date them unless they're this old, or you shouldn't be president or working in Congress if you're this old. Like, this is your prime. Anyway,
Yeah.
the look on your face says, "I can't believe she just said that."
No.
Okay.
I mean, because it's like, ranting about politics in a business show doesn't really do anything. But I mean, yeah, it's
I just think we need
kind
limits.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird that you
mostly-
see these people that are, worth $20 million on a $174,000 salary, never having like worked in the private sector. Like, wow, that is
makes me
something.
go, so you should retire, right? Get out. You should retire.
Yeah,
But
you're rich. Yeah.
So we've got these. So when you think about the last, about the baby boomers and World War II,
Yeah.
right? When was World War II?
1937 to 1939 to 1945.
Mhm.
U.S. got in December 41. Yeah.
Right. So kind of over right around 44, 45.
Yeah.
What's next year? 24. Exactly 80 years since then. That was the beginning of the baby boom, right? So now those first baby boomers are turning 80.
So they're not spending money.
They're not spending
And
money.
then what's the other generation you're saying is not spending money then?
The ones that are 40, right? They're not having kids, but they're not spending money like they were either. Well, now we could see something a little bit different about that too, because look at
They
you.
could spend more consumer money on themselves.
They could. It'll
Yeah.
be very interesting. So 2024 has the ability to be a double whammy kind of recession, or we could see something completely crazy happen. But you might want to prepare for it. Could get weird.
Yeah.
It could get weird.
The long-term effects of that, just as
economy.
far as business planning, and this is completely anecdotal, but I'm, I guess, an elder millennial. I'm like the very top of the generation, and
Mhm.
the number of people I know that just sort of like, I think the romantic comedy term from the early 2000s was just failure to launch. That were like kind of didn't get a career, kind of didn't get married, kind of didn't have kids, kind of are just kind of around.
Mhm.
Which as an individual, that's a choice, but as a generation, that's a trend that's going to affect, how many people buy houses and are, like doing things that stimulate the economy.
It's going to
And
be a
it's just
detriment.
going to be a lot smaller. And I realize that there's a housing shortage right now, but I'm assuming that on the other side of that, because people are having less kids, we're going to get into a situation again where potentially sometime in the future prices may drop because we aren't replacing ourselves as a population.
Right. Right. Well,
so-
and so when you think about what happened in Japan, they had a 20-year flat economy because of how they treated interest rates. So
Yeah.
we're looking at kind of the same thing right now. And that's what happened after the Great Depression also. When you look at the stock market and how it took 20 years to get back to where it was at the peak of the stock market before the crash. 20 years.
Okay. So are you
So,
saying
and if you
20
think that
years
can't
from, like, it could be 20 years from 2024 that it took to
Oh,
climb
no, I
back?
don't think it'll be 2020. I don't think it'll be 20 years from 2024.
Okay.
I'm just saying from our last big recession, which you could call 2008, and you could start measuring all that time, right? So
Yeah.
you say that was the last big crash. Well, now we're up here, and if this really is the next big crash, then yes, it could be 20 years beyond that before we start seeing a real uptick and thrive again. But that doesn't mean there isn't money to be made, and that doesn't mean that there aren't people who are going to pull ahead and become quite wealthy as a result of it. It just means that you need to not have this idea that if I just buy and hold, it'll always go up. No, there were 40-year time spans in our country's history where real estate did not go up
Yeah.
at all. So if you want to look at from the 80s to now and go, real estate always goes up. Well, I mean, it did, but then before that, it didn't. So are you going to tell me that can't happen again?
Yeah.
That-
Yeah.
I think it's foolish to just agree with whatever the salespeople tell you. Yeah, the
Yeah.
stock market always goes up. Real estate always goes up. Not always.
Not always.
And
You
do
know,
you
I
have 20
mean,
years to recover? I want to,
probably
I
not.
do, right? Like
Yeah.
20
Well,
years
and
is a long time.
that's one of the things I realized is I look back at '08 and, you know, I say this with a bit of a red face, you know, I got completely freaked out. Like, oh my gosh, I'm never buying a piece of property ever because I saw my friends get out of grad school or, you know, undergrad and just buy something immediately to where the point where it was ridiculous. I will never forget. I was a graduate assistant. So I think I made $806 a month while I was getting my MBA, you know, take home. And so, I mean, I had like 5 roommates in a 3-bedroom house. It's like a thing you're just trying to get through 18 months of your life, right?
Yep.
Um,
I feel
and
you.
my friends were buying a townhome in a subdivision that they're like, oh, well, if you just go take the tour, you get $100 gift card to Target. Well, that increased my net worth by like 5% at that point. So
Right.
I kind of had to go
Well,
do
I'll
it.
go take the tour.
And so I took the tour, and at the end, they just had me write down, you know, like my occupation. They didn't ask my personal info at the end. And they're like, well, how much do you make? $1,000 a month before taxes, you know, and then $806 a month. Do you have any other income? No, I don't. You know, I'm freaking really poor. And so they approved me to purchase a condo at $1,100 a month. This is right before everything crashed.
That's,
And they were like, well, we would assume you get another job. And I left. And there had been some rumblings. I think this was like June or July. I'll never forget like that when the movie The Dark Knight came out. I remember that was the first time like I kind of heard like that was like '08. And I remember just kind of right around that movie was a huge hit in the summer. Some just rumblings that like, hey, maybe the real estate market's in really bad trouble. And I remember it's like I saw that movie and then I took that tour and I walked out of there. I'm like, oh, we're screwed. Something really bad's gonna happen. Like really bad. But the lesson that I should not have learned there is that right after that, a couple of my friends bought standalone homes for like $30,000, and I was like, "Well, I can't do that. They're going to go down to $12,000. I know it." And it was a little bit of that scarcity mindset I grew up with. It was completely the wrong move.
Yeah.
I probably could have bought 2 or 3 homes in my early 20s, honestly, because there was so much going to foreclosure and stuff.
Yeah.
And then a couple of rentals.
When the pandemic happened and the market tanked, right? It went from like 34, 33, 34 to 18.
Yeah.
18.8, something like that. I was like, oh, this is going to be a great opportunity. Market's diving, be a great opportunity to get in because it will go back up, right? And you know that and I hope the real estate market really crashes this time because it didn't crash enough in '08. It really should have.
Okay, I've never heard that one before. You want to unpack that?
Yeah, it really should have. They rescued the real estate market, right? They bailed out the banks, and there are a lot more homes that should have gone into foreclosure that didn't, and so it kind of softened the blow. So if natural forces would have happened, it would have brought the market back down to where it was affordable for people with, you know, real kind of incomes instead of just going like, tell us what fake income you want to have so that you can get this property, right? But actual real buying power, but it didn't. And so it's kept a whole lot of people out of the market since '08 because even though they were making more money, they still don't make enough to be able to buy a home because the home prices are so out of whack compared to incomes. This is in California. Yeah, should have fallen a lot further.
I am all about people, you know, or companies experiencing the pain. What's that?
Let the whole balloon deflate and right, like that's what a freaking bubble is. Let the bubble completely burst, not halfway burst. But they let it halfway burst because the baby boomers didn't want to lose all of their wealth.
Yeah. Well, same thing. And I'm like the only person that's still mad about this. I don't care. I'll go to my grave on this one. The fact that General Motors did not pay back $10 billion in government loans. Not only does that piss me off so much. No, they didn't. So they got a loan from Bush and they got a loan from Obama and they paid their Obama loan back. And they're like, look, we repaid our government loan. Their Bush loan was taken as a write down essentially.
Really?
And what's horrible about that is if we just would have let it die, Toyota probably would have bought it and made General Motors merge with the most reliable car company in the
See, this
world.
is, in my opinion, the problem that happens when you've got capitalism and socialism trying to regulate each other.
Yeah.
Let the market forces do what they're supposed to do. If it's not working, just unwind the company, let it go, right? Let the money will flow to another company that's doing a
Yeah.
better job. Let that happen. But when you're propping up old companies that are antiquated and not running as efficiently as they could be today, now you're keeping everybody else from getting further ahead just so that you can keep the wealth in the old cronies' pockets.
Yeah.
I can't imagine any other reason why you wouldn't let it happen, because they'd hella let it happen to small businesses. I tell you that.
Yeah.
They wouldn't care if small businesses went under, not one bit.
Yeah. One of
Yeah.
my very good friends launched another retail store. He owned multiples. We launched a running store, I think, in '08. And they were able to get through it. And he's since greatly expanded from there. But I just remember this is back when Gen Z, Facebook, aka Boomer Book Gen Z, your status used
Boomer
to start
buck.
with is, and you were just supposed to say what you were doing right now, like is drinking green tea or whatever. And
Right,
a
right,
friend of mine just
right. I
put
remember that.
is waiting for his bailout, and I will never forget like how much traction they got. He got on that, where it was just like, yeah,
Where's
for you and
mine?
me, it's not coming. It
Right.
is definitely not coming. But the moral of the story there, to loop back on that, is there's a lot of money to be made in any market.
Oh
You're
yeah.
not going to make it if you freaking lose your mind, and you're probably not going to make it if you were just zoned out on sugar and brain fog for a whole quarter of the year.
And you're not going to make it if your identity is still one that says, oh no, I can't. If that's going to happen once, it's going to happen again. It's like you need to understand market forces, and that once it's happened, you're not going to do a double, it's not just going to stay flat, right? It's going to go
Yeah,
back up. You want to catch it on the down if you possibly can. And so shifting your identity from, we could be destitute at any moment, to everything's working out for me, is a powerful mantra, and a
yeah,
really, really important one if you want to build wealth.
yeah. I just realized, because I've been out on my own twice, and I probably didn't have to quit either time. I was just like, um, well, the one time it was because we moved from the Chicago area to St. Louis, and I probably did need to shut down the business because I was doing so much in-person podcast production. It couldn't move, and we had a newborn. And so it was like, we needed to be closer to family. That was worth it.
Yeah, I
But the
get that
first
one.
time I was on my own was like 2012, 2013. The health insurance stuff changed under Obama. And, I think my health insurance bill was going to go up like $600 a month. So I just quit. I'm like, oh, screw this. Can't do it. I'm going to go get a job. And I look
Really,
back, and there was a lot of other stuff in there. Like I was dating a chick who was just crazy that I broke up with after
it's probably a good idea.
yeah, we broke up, and then I was on my way to go talk to her to see if we could work things out, and I got into a head-on car crash, which was God's way of saying if you get back with her, you might as well just be dead. It's pretty much the same thing.
That's how I
Uh
would have read that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And so
God said, stop.
yeah, all
Literally.
right. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna
In your
smash a Subaru on the way
tracks.
there.
In your
Um,
tracks.
but
Whatever
I
it
look back
takes.
at that and I was like, I wasn't that far off. I just didn't see it as a possibility that I could make another
Yeah.
$600 a month, which I even look back. That's back in like the first year of Uber where you got to keep all the money. Year one, Uber
Well,
didn't even take a split. Like I could have
and
just done that.
yeah, well, and that was 12 years ago. You
Yeah.
were 28. You probably didn't need health insurance nearly as much as you do now, right?
Yeah.
Or that you will 8 more years from now,
Yeah.
depending on how good you take care of your body. But the bottom line is you could have just been fine and just been like, well, I'll wait until I have it. Health insurance isn't the
Yeah.
big priority at 28, you
So if you're
know?
listening to this in some kind of management, scenario or something like that, where it's like you can see the people that are like, oh, well, we're probably gonna have layoffs in 2024. Yeah, probably are. I mean, that doesn't mean that it's going to be you. And
Right.
especially if you do the stuff where you're not just binging on sugar and you actually have goals and you finish out December really well, that helps. And if you just do
Tremendously.
the stuff that, when you're out on your own and you're running a business or whatever, the stuff that you avoid is so painful that you pretty much have to do it. It's like, well, this person's late on their invoice. Well, if I don't yell at them, I'm going to be in trouble. Right. But when you're in a larger organization where there's more layers, there's more incentive to not take care of the painful stuff. It's like, well, I've got this really problem employee. Everybody keeps complaining about it, but I'll be soft in the annual review because I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. And now would be the time to not do that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, make the hard call before times get tough. Like, close the sales, be excellent. And then if you go into a recession, like, first of all, sometimes you just get caught and whole divisions get laid off or whatever, but you're going to have the stellar resume to go in. Like, there's never nobody hiring.
Right. Well, no, this is going to be a great time for small companies and startups to nab some incredible talent at a lower price. So if you do get laid off, you really need to be prepared to maybe take a little bit less to start off in a company that will give you a lot more upside potential than the company that just laid you off. That's a way to approach it. It's also, let's not go spending wildly right now. Let's just wait till the dust settles and make sure you still have a job and all of that stuff. But definitely take everything very, very seriously. Most importantly, your health, because when you get laid off, that health concern, that health issue is still there.
Yeah.
It's not going
well,
away.
And then you have insurance, or you've got Cobra or whatever. And that is
Medi-Cal, Medicaid, Medicare, all of that.
Yeah.
You got that if you need it. So health insurance isn't that big of a deal when it comes to health insurance. It's not worth spending $1,200 a month out of your pocket on if you have to, if you're just getting started on your own and you need to, you will have Medicare. Medicare's there to back you up. So do not worry about that, right? Go spend your money doing the things that will make a business grow. And if you're an executive and you've never been an entrepreneur, I highly recommend you start adopting a lot of the traits that entrepreneurs have, because that is what's going to make you invaluable.
Yeah. By the way, just when you find out how much you can really work around the medical system, when my wife and I got married, I changed jobs. And so I didn't have insurance for 30 days. And, I went out running at night and I stepped in a pothole and just completely bit it. Sprained my ankle so bad I couldn't walk. We just moved. I didn't know anybody else in town. So I'm calling her. I'm sitting on the freaking sidewalk, just like with my foot swelling up, being like, I cannot walk on this thing. And she wasn't paying attention to her phone. Finally, a squad car drives by and I wave him down. I'm like, dude, I'm new to town. I can't get home. I can't walk. And so I had to be humble enough to, like, as a 6'6" guy, be like leaning on this cop who takes me to my apartment. And then we get there and Amanda starts like sobbing, crying. She's like, we gotta go to the emergency room. I'm like, no, we don't. And she's like, well, what if it's broken? I'm like, oh, insurance kicks in 3 weeks. It'll be broken in 3 weeks. Just wrap it up. Like,
they'll send you a bill for it too, right?
Yeah, or if I had to, they'll send me a bill. But it was
all of that.
It wasn't as big of a deal as, it's like, okay, so you had a broken bone. I mean, wrap it up, be on crutches. You're probably okay in a couple weeks. I mean,
worst case scenarios, they have to re-break it because it started healing improperly. But still, yeah, you could have gone to the emergency room and you could have had the x-rays and have that all. And then they would have sent you a bill for 10 times more than it actually cost. And then you just negotiate it down and you pay what's reasonable.
Well, and when I look back, when I said that I quit one round of entrepreneurship because my health insurance went up by $600, I went into the worst job of my life. I really did. I look back and I'm like, man, those were like really dumb people I worked with. And I almost just said, screw this. I'm not going to go like career track here. I'm just going to go work at Costco as an assistant manager. And it was kind of not that bad money. And I just didn't think I was going to love the job. And there were some warning signs there. By the way, I think these kind of fell out of favor. Do you know about stress test interviews?
No.
So they're not cool. If you ever get one, just don't take the job. It is where they take you in a room and they put you with like they usually hire like a therapist to do it. And they just ask you like difficult questions and then push you really hard to
crack.
Like to crack.
Really?
It's like a North Korean
boundaries.
It's like a North Korean like torture session. Like if you got caught as a spy or something like that. And I had a 4-hour interview like that. And I remember leaving and being like, should I even work for somebody that would do that to me? Like, why in the world was that necessary? And, I took the job because, I don't know, Blue Cross Blue Shield or something. And I was miserable for a year. And then I had to quit because I had to check in with my boss. And he was like, so how are things? Well, no, he's like, how are things going this week? And I'm like, I literally said, I hate everything about this job and I don't like the people I work with. I didn't even mean to, but at that point, you just pretty much got to just give your notice.
You're like, you know what? In fact, I gotta go. Bye.
Yeah.
You just gotta walk out of your review. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I don't. I've never experienced anything like that because the last time I did a job interview, I was 23.
Yeah. And so you realized pretty early on like who you were.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, let's wrap up on say that.
I was going to say I worked a 9 to 5 for about 3 months in between undergrad and graduate school, and I wanted to kill myself every day. It was like, I'm going to cut my wrist. I'm out of here. 3 months. That's all I could take.
I think I just probably should have recognized it earlier because I think other people just had more tolerance for the corporate like BS stuff. Then some people just aren't as good at being like, oh, okay, yeah, like one of my friends said, he's like, yeah, I've got a really good sales job, but part of that is if you tell me to dig a hole and fill it back in, I'm going to. And I don't do the best with that. And I finally just realized that means I'm probably not the best employee, and I should figure something else out.
Probably not be an employee.
Well, I remembered when I was 19 years old, and I was working while playing junior college basketball. During the glory days. And I figured out that my boss at my retail job just was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And I just wanted to test the limits of her abilities. So I legitimately had the flu or something. And I called in sick with scurvy just to see if she would catch it. And she just told me to feel better. And then I got back to work. She's like, how's your scurvy? I'm like, oh, it improved. And she never caught that that's like a bone disease that affected 1,500 sailors for not enough vitamin C.
Because of vitamin C deficiency.
Yeah. So if you do stuff like that, maybe you shouldn't work for other people.
It's really hard to work for people that you have a greater capacity for. So it may not be that you're not employable. It just may be that there's very few people that you would work for. And so you have to be in a position to want to work for them. Because the law of the lid, right? This is leadership. The law of the lid says you can't lead somebody who's bigger in capacity than you.
Yeah.
Which means if they're more capable than you are, you're not going to lead them or teach them anything because they have no respect for your knowledge or your leadership. That would be leading by position, which is just management. It's not leadership. Real leadership is influence. And so in order to be influential, you have to build your capacity. And if you want to move up the ranks and be a really great executive, you have to improve your capacity intentionally.
Yeah. And what does that, just break that down real quick. What does that look like? Because you've coached a lot of very high performing people.
So your capacity may be really, really high in the actual job part of it, but it could be very low in your interpersonal skills and in your leadership. And leadership is largely interpersonal skills, understanding other people, and then communicating. The communication is where almost everybody falls down, right? Because we are not taught how to communicate growing up in our homes. We're taught how to get along, right? Yeah. But not how to communicate effectively or communicate our needs or set boundaries or any of those things. Not unless you have very intentional parents. So the vast majority of people are not taught that. It's not taught in school. It's not taught, here's how to have conflict resolution. Here's how to here's how to, mold someone that you're trying to guide and make and improve. And here's how you do it. Here's how you do it without demoralizing them. As opposed to, here's what you got to change and get better. And then they're left going, why do I even want to? You don't make me want to be a better person. So leadership is about helping other people want to do what you want them to do. And that's what's good for the organization and good for everybody else. But very few people have the communication skills, both before conflict happens and also when you're dealing with conflict, to be able to make that happen.
Yeah. I will say that another thing there is just basic project management skills that are kind of everything when the goal is to get a project or get a sale done or, get something across the finish line. Mm-hmm. I saw another, we'll just say like senior executive leader. I ran into at a barbecue joint this fall, and he was really stressed about something, and he's like, oh my gosh, my whole day is full of meetings and stuff. And I just suggested him, like, I use the project management app Motion, and it blocks my calendar. Like, I feed it how many tasks I have to do that day, and it blocks my calendar. And then if somebody tries to request a meeting off the website or whatever, potential client, it'll tell them no because I'm under deadline. Basically, it'll be blocked out. And
cool.
he'd never heard of stuff like that. And I think there's so much like training that happens in the corporate world, even up to the executive level, that doesn't wind up just being, here's how you manage your dang time.
Right.
And you're going to have to go find that on your own.
That's one of the things that I've always been so good at is my time management. I don't know where it came from. It just came naturally to me in high school, and I was just able to. It's one of the reasons why I've done so much in the life that I've led so far. I mean, how do you have decades in personal training, decades in, financial planning, decades in mental health without them all overlapping? Because I can do a lot with the amount of time that I have. And that is probably the biggest thing that I see deters most people from having everything that they want. They can't manage their time, or they can't manage their activity within the time that they have, like I can, right? So they go, I don't have time to work out. You seriously can't find 30, 40 minutes a day to work out? Really? What are you doing? Because if you're not Bezos in the building phase, right? If you're not if you're not hustling 20 hours a day, I guarantee you can find a little bit of time for your health. Otherwise, you are never going to make it. You're not going to make it to the $1 billion company because you're going to crap out long before then.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's just on you to get those skills. I mean, I came from not the same background, but by the time I had graduated from college, I was actually working in TV. I was working in radio, and I was writing for national magazines. As a 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old. Consequently, I had terrible grades. I went from like a 4.0 at the end of my sophomore year to, I think I graduated like a 2 point something, because something had to crack. But I figured I probably better have a degree and I shouldn't drop out, which I think that was the right decision.
Good idea.
It was the right decision, because in certain scenarios that's really still going to, in the early 2000s, that was really still something that mattered a lot, right? But one of the
didn't have
things
back then what we have now.
No, yeah. And one of the things I realized that I got more opportunities than other people to do is because I could just shoulder things without kind of hitting that overwhelm point where people would just quit and be like, oh, this is just too much. It's like too much.
Really a big mindset thing, right?
Yeah.
Where do you feel like you cultivated that mindset from? Was it sports? Was it growing up on the farm? It
might have been.
Was it just funny, like seeing family members mentally tough and not make excuses for stuff, and so you followed suit?
It probably was that. Probably a lot of the lore from my family of origin. Like, my great grandfather, who my second daughter is named after him. His name was Emery. It can be a boy or girl's name, so we used it. We said we're using it either way for this kid. And he'd gotten kicked out of med school for fist fighting, honest to God. And he went out to Montana, was one of the last open range cowboys, like before that era ended. And he came back, and he made one really good decision. Was he bought a tractor when nobody else was buying tractors going into the Depression, and we were able to expand the farming operations because of that. And then the next generation took over, and one of my great uncles grew the farm from 400 to 5,000 acres, because he was just nuts. Like, I don't know other way to say it. Like, he would buy more ground, and people would be like, you can't work that by yourself, and you don't have money for help. How are you ever going to get harvest done? Because when, the ears start falling off the corn stalks, you're losing money by the minute if you're not harvesting, and you can't get all your fields out at the same time. And he would just do it. I don't know. He just did. And so I think going in, I was a teenager. I was broke. My parents split up. I was trying to help my mom with some bills and stuff. And it's just like, well, this is money. And there was a trade-off. Like, I don't have nearly the relationships out of college that most people probably do, because I was working all the time.
Me too. I feel the same way. I didn't keep any relationships from college. I have ones from before that.
But it did probably set the tone for the rest of my life, as to where I normally would just say, hey, I can take on a project when other people wouldn't. And going into this next year, if you're in any kind of management, or if you're, running a business or whatever, I would say that going into recession is not a time to turn down opportunity.
I agree. I agree, because not just the money, but you never know what that's going to connect you to or who it's going to connect you to. So I would say yes to absolutely everything that you
Yeah.
can possibly say yes to that isn't going to make it harder to fulfill any of the other yeses that you've said yes to. So like you can't have an unlimited pile of yeses because then you can't do anything with them, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't wear 5 shirts at once. Right? There's only so many you can do at a time. But say yes. I would say yes to a lot of things. And if you have to turn one down eventually after you said yes, it'd be better than saying no right off the bat.
Yeah.
People get
So
into a bad habit of that.
you got 5 weeks. That's more time than you think if you just do something with it. And as
Mm-hmm.
you're doing that, by the way, you can hit up Allie if you want to do what she's doing and like legitimately hit the gym hard and you don't have a plan. Hit her up. That is in the description of this. It's also bodbyallie.com. You can find her
Yeah.
on LinkedIn or Twitter. The name is right
Yeah.
there. And if you're an
I'm on
executive,
Instagram and Facebook too. But,
kind
you
of,
know, yeah,
yeah, you can find her over there as
kind
well.
of. Yeah.
Not as active as the Twitter sphere. But you know, I am just retooling and launching a company called Manx, and really focused around building an entire brand of executives and entrepreneurs to drive everything towards the sales funnel, being, you know, podcast, video, SEO, blogging, all this stuff actually goes together now, and it can be done a lot easier than you think. And it is not 1996 anymore when you could be the CEO of Pepsi and nobody cared who you
Yeah.
were as long as Pepsi kept shipping to gas stations. Now, if you're
Yeah.
going to be in a senior leadership role, it means being outwardly facing,
Mhm.
and it is dang hard to do that by yourself if you haven't been swimming in those waters for the last like 15 years. And
Mhm.
so if you need some help on that, I can help you do that. One of the things that you know, Allie is going to be looking at in 2024 is, you know, doing another. You've done a couple books on your own, doing one this time paired up with the New York Times best-selling author, to
That'd
make
be
sure that this
really
one's
cool.
really a banger. And
I'm really
so
excited.
I've got those in the stable, if you will. If you know that a lot of executives are successful because they have books and because it opens doors. If you want to
Mhm.
write with a New York Times bestselling author, that is a really good way to wind up with a really good book and to actually get it done. Like if you're partnered up with
Yeah.
somebody, it's actually going to get finished, and it's really hard to self-drive a project. So just a bit of a preview,
Yeah.
a little more that'll be coming up more in the coming weeks. But you know, if you find yourself in that place, one of the ways to recession-proof yourself is to make yourself a more valuable brand.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Opportunities will always be there for those.
yeah. The description, the contact info for both of us once again is in the description. It's called the Optimized Executive. We're getting the social channels up next week, and so whatever your
Yeah.
preferred method is, YouTube, podcast,
Send me an
etc., it'll be
email
there.
or a DM. Let me help you. Let me help you
Yeah,
figure out what's going on.
hit her up.
So
She fixed my shoulder and then talked me off the ledge of going back to a job roughly 37 million times in the last 11 months. So
yeah, we mapped out some financial stuff and some mindset things and
I really, seriously, I mean, we're ending, but I really might have quit by now if I hadn't had some kind of coaching in there, and I'm really glad I didn't. And then some hurdles came up this week, and it's like, you know, figure them out. Like as to where before I think I would have shut
yeah.
down. I probably shut down for a good 20, 30 minutes yesterday because a couple of things came out of nowhere. With
Yeah, but you reached out right away, which I was super
I
proud
reached
of
out
you
right away.
for.
You
Yeah.
know, just sort of a couple of client issues and stuff that were very, very frustrating. And you know, I kind of had a bad hour, and then I got back to it. So
Yeah.
you cannot underestimate the value if you're going out on your own and getting some kind of business coach, which is
Yeah.
mine is in the red sweater right there.
Oh.
Because you're plowing a path that has not been walked before. And
At least by you.
at least by
It
you,
hasn't been walked by you.
at least by you. And
That's
it is
adoption is the hard part.
immensely valuable to have somebody that knows what the heck they're doing there. And it's easier to say like, oh, I'd rather have cooler office furniture, or, you know, like print my logo on a bunch of backpacking with my friends because I think that's business development. It's not. Stop giving your friends free crap from your business.
Right.
What you actually need is like, you need somebody to help light up the path to like get you to profitability, success, and stability. And I'm still here because of that. So you can hit either one of us up. We are live on Tuesdays. So we will see you then. Don't eat crap, go to the gym, make some money. Bye.
Mwah.